So a few weeks ago, I uploaded The Mistakes of George R. R. Martin, a video detailing, well, the mistakes of George R. R. Martin. And one of the most frequent topics of comment both here on YouTube and on the A Song of Ice and Fire subreddit was Joffrey and the Valyrian Steel Dagger. Specifically speaking, the comments were about how I was wrong about Joffrey and the dagger being a mistake. I got a lot of different opinions and outlooks about why that scenario worked in some people's minds, and why it didn't work in others. Heck, I was even able to talk to Elio Garcia about it, one of the co-authors for The World of Ice and Fire. So because of all this, I actually wanted to come back to this topic. Instead of trying to bash you over the head again with my opinions about the mistakes of A Song of Ice and Fire, I thought it would be very interesting to present the arguments for all sides as unbiased as I could. Here are the three that came up the most. Number 1. Joffrey wasn't the one who sent the assassin. Number 2. Joffrey was the one who sent the assassin, and the entire scenario is easily explained because of Joffrey's cruelty and stupidity. Number 3. Joffrey was the one who sent the assassin, but the scenario is too contrived and coincidental to be believable. Now again, before I start, I just want to say that A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite fictional work of all time. This video is not meant to bash George R. R. Martin or his writing. In fact, I view that this video is even possible is a testament to how fantastic the series is. So much care and detail has been put into creating this story that the fans can be divided and still stand on equal footing. Those are the best kinds of stories, those which can make each person come away with a unique experience. But enough gushing, let's get into these three arguments. So first, Joffrey wasn't the one who sent the assassin. I received messages about the fact that perhaps the reason the assassination didn't make sense was because someone else ordered it. I got messages about Littlefinger sending the guy, Cersei, even Robert. Some even suggested a yet-to-be-revealed character is the orchestrator behind the assassination. Now, in complete honesty, for those that prescribe to this argument, you are justified in your position because there's no concrete evidence within the text that pinpoints a culprit. However, literally all of the evidence that is provided in the text points towards one character, Joffrey. In A Storm of Swords, Tyrion remembers that while at Winterfell, Joffrey was joking with Sandor Clegane about sending a dog to kill a wolf. Also in A Storm of Swords, both Cersei and Jaime admit to each other that they were not behind the assassination. Jaime ponders that the assassination attempt was Joffrey's way of trying to please his father, King Robert. Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei, the three people who knew Joffrey the best, all suspect it to be him. If you want to believe that someone else is the mastermind, you are entitled to that belief, because the text does not give confirmation on the topic. But for the sake of this video, we will move on to the next two arguments and assume that Joffrey did send the assassin. So the second argument, Joffrey was the one who sent the assassin, and the entire scenario is easily explained because Joffrey's cruelty and stupidity. So if we look at his motivations point by point, the first part is pretty easy to grasp. Joffrey is just a cruel dick. He cuts the cheek of Arya's friend Mycah with a sword, torments Sansa in disgustingly creative ways, and of course killed Ned Stark to play his part in the prophecy Sean being contracted with the gods of Hollywood eons ago. Joffrey goes out of his way to turn mundane situations into despicable circumstances. This alone is justification enough to kill Bran. Joffrey is just kind of evil, and Bran is basically dry humping death's door anyway, so why not just finish the job? We can also add in a quote from Jaime about Joffrey on top of this. He was a child hungry for a pat on the head from that sot you let him believe was his father. Jaime is talking to Cersei and believes that Joffrey might have killed Bran in order to impress Robert. Robert once told Cersei, "We kill our horses when they break a leg, and our dogs when they go blind, but we are too weak to give the same mercy to crippled children." Joffrey might have heard this line of thinking from his father, the king, the most powerful authority on the continent, and thought that the assassination was the right thing to do. So with his motivation understood, we can look at why Joffrey chose the Valyrian Steel Dagger. I received some comments stating that Joffrey definitely knew how valuable Valyrian steel was, and specifically chose a weapon worthy of a prince's mission. Other comments suggested that Joffrey knew the dagger was Valyrian steel, but had no true conception of its value because of his upbringing as a prince. Sort of how someone who grew up around really expensive things might not appreciate how expensive they really are. But I think the text offers an even better, more logical option. Joffrey didn't know the blade was Valyrian steel at all. When pondering the events of the assassination, Tyrion thinks, the prince's own dagger had a jeweled pommel and inlaid goldwork on the blade. At least Joff had not been stupid enough to use that. Instead, he went poking among his father's weapons. The blade Joff chose was nice and plain, no goldwork, no jewels on the hilt, no silver inlay on the blade. King Robert never wore it, had likely forgotten he owned it. Joffrey specifically chose the dagger because he thought it was inconspicuous, that it would not lead back to himself. This turns the Valyrian steel dagger from a random choice to a calculated move. Another indicator that Joffrey didn't know the dagger was Valyrian steel was the assassination took place after the Lannisters left. There's almost no way Joffrey was getting that dagger back, so he probably didn't think much of it. Lastly, as many people have stated, Joffrey is just a dumb 12-year-old. What preteen do you know that could come up with a flawless assassination attempt? He was hasty, impetuous, and probably thought all it took to kill an heir to Winterfell was a handful of silver coins and a dutiful lackey. So, to sum up this argument, we will go with the possibilities that take the least leaps of logic. Joffrey didn't know what the dagger was, gave it to the assassin, and didn't care whether or not the dagger was returned. He tried to kill Bran because of a possible combination of two motivators. He is cruel, and he is following his father's ideals. As an aside, because we don't hear anything from either Joffrey or the assassin on this subject, this is all pretty much conjecture. There is no concrete textual evidence to back up these claims, but they are our best educated guesses. So the third argument. Joffrey was the one who sent the assassin, but the scenario is too contrived and coincidental to be believable. Let's go through the assassination and look at just how coincidental each step may or may not have been. Here is the most logical sequence of events laid out. The assassin joins King Robert's procession north. Joffrey overhears Robert drunkenly say Bran would be better dead. Joffrey decides to kill Bran either out of brutality, a desire to impress his father, or both. Joffrey finds the assassin and convinces him to accept the assassination without anyone loyal to the Starks finding out. And finally, either the cat's paw doesn't have his own weapons, or he does and Joffrey orders him to use a weapon he provides. So, let's quickly go point by point. The assassin joins King Robert's procession north. The text gives us no real evidence as to when the assassins started hanging around our main characters, but Tyrion gives a pretty good explanation when thinking on the matter, which is as follows. Instead, the boy found his cat's paw among the unsavory lot of free riders, merchants, and camp followers who'd attached themselves to the king's party as they made their way north. This line of thinking makes the most sense. The assassin probably wasn't a northerner, because a northerner wouldn't be too keen on jamming a knife into the gullet of a member of the region's ruling family. He was probably a southerner who would just join the procession after they left King's Landing, and before they reached the neck. But still, this is coincidence. The assassin just happened to be a part of the procession. As far as the text reads, we have no information saying he was ordered to travel with Robert's host. He just happened to be there. A believable coincidence, but a coincidence nonetheless. Next, Joffrey overhears his father drunkenly say that Bran would be better dead. This too is a coincidence because the text gives no indication Joffrey hearing this was planned. Honestly, we don't even know if Joffrey heard this or not. Cersei says Robert told her this, but makes no mention of her children being around. But still, Robert drank a lot, and talked a lot. So even though this is still a coincidence, it is again a coincidence that doesn't require much suspension of disbelief. So next, Joffrey decides to kill Bran either out of brutality, a desire to impress his father, or both. At best, these are guesses Tyrion, Cersei, and Jaime make, and not really great ones at that. The three closest characters to Joffrey, his mother, father, and uncle, are pretty much at a loss for why he would have Bran assassinated. They literally just have to make wild guesses about his motivations and about what he did or didn't overhear Robert say. All this means that to this day, through 5 books, we still have no given reason for the inciting incident for the story, why the war started. We just have to shrug and guess about the motivations behind the action that ignited the conflict of the series. Normally, I wouldn't consider this coincidence or calculation, but for the sake of fairness, I will side with the benefit of the doubt and say this motivation is supported by the text. Joffrey is just cruel, or he could want to impress his father. Either one can work for this. Next, Joffrey finds the assassin and convinces him to accept the assassination without anyone loyal to the Starks finding out. This one is one of the weirder and funnier ones to unpack. When thinking back to Winterfell, Tyrion notes that Joffrey wouldn't have ever asked the Hound to kill Bran because the Hound would have notified Cersei of Joffrey's scheming. And Lord knows none of the Kingsguard would have kept the information secret either, seeing as how Bran was the son of the king's best friend. So what does this mean? Well, it means that Joffrey, a 12-year-old boy, had to contract an assassin by himself. An assassin who was willing to kill a Stark. He had to do this literally in the capital of the North in a matter of days before leaving back to King's Landing. He just happened to find someone on his own without tipping off any of the people loyal to Winterfell or someone who might want to spill the beans to the Starks. I mean, just picture Joffrey walking around the winter town alone at night in a cowl, propositioning seedy strangers to kill Bran Stark. Yeah, I'm gonna say this is a pretty blatant coincidence. And last, either the assassin doesn't have his own weapons, or he does and Joffrey orders him to use a weapon he provides. This one is where I struggle to find any logical reasoning, because both options require so much suspension of disbelief that it starts to become a problem. If the assassin didn't have any weapons of his own, why would Joffrey hire him? I get it, Joffrey is a dumb preteen, but this is too dumb. Even he would recognize how useless a bladeless assassin is. And the other option is 100 times worse. The assassin did have weapons of his own, but Joffrey demanded he use Robert's dagger. If that's the case, contrived isn't a strong enough word. Remember, the War of Five Kings is predicated on Catelyn finding the dagger and kidnapping Tyrion. If the assassin had his own blades, that wouldn't have happened. If Joffrey hadn't insisted on using the Valyrian steel dagger, that wouldn't have happened. The assassin being supplied the Valyrian steel dagger is the most egregious contrivance in the plot. Other options are more logically sound, but they don't lead to the necessary narrative outcome, so George R. R. Martin ignores them. So here is what we're finalized with. The assassin just happens to join King Robert's procession north, which is a coincidence. Joffrey just happens to overhear Robert drunkenly say Bran would be better dead. Coincidence. Joffrey decides to kill Bran either out of brutality, a desire to impress his father, or both. Not a coincidence. Joffrey just happens to find the assassin and convinces him to accept the assassination without anyone loyal to the Starks finding out. Coincidence. And finally, either the catspaw just happens to not have his own weapons, a coincidence, or he does and Joffrey orders him to use a weapon he provides, contrivance. And for maximum clarity, the crux of this argument, at least as far as I've constructed it, isn't that Joffrey couldn't possibly have done all this. All the actions taken are definitely plausible. The core of this argument is that the assassination is built upon coincidences that strain believability. George R. R. Martin needed this assassination to happen to kick the plot into gear, and needed the dagger's owner to be a mystery to those involved. These happenstances only stand out because the rest of the plot points are so meticulously detailed in their preparation. Leaps of faith and guesswork are required of the audience to fill in the basic elements of the assassination, a crucial moment in the narrative. Replacing the coincidences with calculated actions from characters would have served this plot point much better. And just like that, we have our arguments for and against Joffrey. I tried to approach each one with as much objectivity as possible. Let me know in the comments how I did, or if there is anything within the text that I failed to consider. Again, the story is so detailed that there is no way I could have fit everything I wanted to into a video without making it half an hour long. So for all of you A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones fan, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I plan to be making another soon.